Hello and welcome back to the channel. Sam Richards here, amateur bodybuilder and classic physique competitor. Well, we will be soon. And today we've got a great video for you. My blood test results as an enhanced bodybuilder. How is my health? This is 8 weeks post cycle. We finished off our prep, turned into sort of more of a cut, I guess, because we didn't end up competing. 8 weeks ago now, we were on 300 testosterone, 450 primo, 80 micrograms of clen, 15 milligrams of your himbin. So how have we recovered? How is my cruise dose? Have I hit the mark? Have I not? There's a few results here which are spiked, which are low. We'll run through everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, and where we go from here as we look forward to the off season. Are we ready? Let's find out. So let's launch into the blood values. So this is red blood cell count, clotting status, white blood cells. What are we looking here? Why do we get them tested? Well, a high red blood cell count is a side effect quite commonly of testosterone, equipoise, lots of anabolic steroids in general. This is not in of itself too harmful potentially. An elevated red blood cell count can actually lead to higher performance, endurance. There are some potential benefits of this, hence the benefits of running equipoise as a compound, for example. However, there are also some drawbacks. Now, my red blood cell count has reduced because I was using equipoise the last time I got a test. I am not now, so it's back in normal range. But the higher the count, the thicker potentially the blood. And this can cause issues because obviously blood viscosity causes just multiple problems within the body. I mean, it's one of the things that Psalms were really demonized for. They tended to thicken the blood to quite a high extent, which can cause some real health concerns. And low red blood cell count can be a sign of kidney disease. So it's good to see that we're in normal range. It means that we've got nothing to worry about here. Let's move on. So speaking of kidneys, how are they? Are they okay? You doing okay? Well, my urea is perfect. There's no signs of problems there. My creatinine is high, but this is something which every bodybuilder will see. This is simply a sign of muscle breakdown. So if you've been working out in any of the days around your blood test, this will likely be very high. No doctor has ever raised a concern about this unless it's sort of in extreme levels, which this is not. This is a very typical creatinine result. eGFR is a stronger performance metric for the kidneys and how well they're functioning. Now, my eGFR is on the normal spectrum, but if you see, it is on the low end of normal. And this is something that's really important to note, okay? You might see green, and that might be good. But if you look into the detail, if you're on that borderline, same way that it's red, but it's only 1 point over, it's not really a concern. If you're green, and you are 1 point away from the red low zone or high zone, whatever it is, that can be a problem. Because then if you're looking to launch into a cycle, you want to make sure that you've got room to maneuver there health-wise, and that anything you introduce won't just instantly tip you over into unhealthy levels. It's not just about where you are now, it's about where you're going to be in a few weeks' time. I am still on a cruise dose of 150 milligrams per week. As we get into this, we can see how that's reflected in my test levels, etc., etc. So they are still having to work, and they are just off a cycle. So there are potential problems there, and we do need to account for that. It is still in the normal range, so that's fine. We'll just need to keep an eye on this as we go forward. If that starts to drop, we might need to obviously reassess our approach. But we're not really going to be hammering the body in the off-season cycle, so I don't really have too many concerns there. Moving on to liver. Now, only ALT is of any real concern. However, as with most results, as a bodybuilder, it's kind of hard to look at results and say, right, green is good, red is bad, because lots of other things cause these indexes to be elevated, such as muscle breakdown. ALT is another one where muscle breakdown can have a significant effect, so this isn't really of any concern to me personally, but as you can tell, you kind of need experience of this, and you kind of need to be clued up to be able to interpret the results, and that is something which you need to take time to learn, what all these things are, what a typical bodybuilder's blood work looks like compared to a normal person's, because a lot of these results, if I wasn't who I was, the muscle mass that I did and all that kind of stuff, would be concerning, whereas because I am who I am, they're not. Proteins and diabetes, we're going to skip this because it's all green. It's all fine. We don't have diabetes and our proteins are fine. Cholesterol, yeah, shit. So LDL is okay. HDL, however, is low. HDL is the protective cholesterol, and this is, obviously the good cholesterol you want within your body. Now, my last result was about 0.54. This is about 0.62, I think. So it's actually improved slightly, which is, positive. However, it does suggest still the supplementation approach we're having isn't maybe sufficient. Maybe we need to look to more superdose the omega-3s that we're taking, because currently we have stepped them back to about, I think, 2,000 milligrams per day, which is slightly on the low end. So we'll be bumping that back up maybe to 4,000, seeing if that has an improvement when we do our mid-cycle bloods. Quite simply, there's a wide array of supplements you can take for this, which will hopefully boost your HDL slightly. But unfortunately, if you're taking anabolics, it's going to be impacted. It's just one of those where it will likely never be perfect. You're just going to have to accept that and obviously do whatever you have within your power to mitigate the damage. And a lot of this is just that. A lot of this, you're not going to find your way to perfect blood test results, but you're going to be able to use your current state to then implement changes and improvements and see if at least the trajectory is positive. If what you're doing and introducing is helping, then that's a good sign. As healthy as possible is the name of the game, not healthy, because none of this is. Now let's move on to some of the exciting stuff, hormones. So where's my FSH and LH? Well, it is in the bin, as you could expect, really. We don't need it. We're introducing exogenous hormones. So simple as that, really. Estrogen, it's higher. And this is interesting because obviously my estrogen last time I got a blood test was impacted by EQ, equipoise, so it was low. Now it's high, and it's higher than normal. Is this an area of concern? There are two camps on this. One would say, yes, it only needs to be in normal range, that's too high. The other, and a lot of people would say, as high as possible without side effects. And I am in that camp. It's not presenting me with any problems, and estrogen is vital for muscle building and all kinds of other bodily functions. So why would I interfere with that, with the risk of potentially, pushing it too far down or outside the normal range in a worse way? It's better to be slightly too high without side effects than slightly too low, because when it's on the low end, you're almost definitely going to feel the difference, mood-wise, loads of other problems to present themselves. And I break this down actually in my SARM suppression video, which I did a few months to a year back now. God, how time flies. But yeah, check that out if you want to know more about that front and my approach to estrogen management. So our testosterone is about 1.5 to 2 times the normal. Quite frankly, this is something to address. This is the first thing I'm like, yes, we need to actually sort this out. Now, I've been cruising on 150 milligrams per week. That's a moderate to high cruise dose for anyone. I enjoy being on this dose, it's absolutely fine for me. I don't feel any effects, don't feel on cycle, but it is the higher end of what we'd want to see for a cruise. So we'd probably want this to be closer to maybe the top end of normal, maybe up to the 1.5 mark, but not going over as it's sort of tipping up against now. There are some factors. Leading up to this test, I did have 2 days in a row where I injected because I missed a pin, so that means there is a higher concentration going into that blood test. So that may actually have a factor that I would have a higher blood concentration level at this time. So I would take it with a pinch of salt. There's no point bringing it down just to have time at a lower dose. If my other values are all healthy, it's not really the biggest of problems. As long as we're not in proper blast range, then we're all good. But let's face it, my cruise dose likely going forward will need to drop down, probably closer to 125 milligrams per week. That should theoretically create the change that we want to see. So free testosterone is high, which is good, more available, but more also is available to aromatize, as you can see in the estrogen result. But not much really to say about that. That's all fine and where we want to see it. Prolactin, now this is actually in a good place as well. Why do we get prolactin tested? Well, prolactin causes lots of other issues. It can be a cause of gyno, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of hotly debated though what role it actually has, but it's in a moderate and proper medium range. This is good because the next cycle we're going to need to know what our baseline is, and I'll leave that to interpretation, because if you know, certain compounds you need to watch your prolactin with. We'll be getting into all of that in the off-season cycle video, which will be coming your way over the next week or two. Finally, the most romantic of all measurements possible from MediChecks, love a bit of alliteration, the prostate. My prostate levels are good. They're moderate to the high end of normal, which is absolutely fine. We just need to keep an eye on this because the prostate is heavily affected by anabolics, and this can be a real concern for people as they go into their later age. You know, this is something you really want to watch because long-term wise, this can have some real damage. It's like having any extended period of time with your kidney or liver levels really highly elevated or whatever it might be. You know, over time, that's going to have an effect, and that's where stuff like kidney disease comes in, or prostate issues. You know, we're not going to say what the worst case scenario is because you don't want to fearmonger, but the important thing is that you understand what values can really have the biggest negative consequences if not managed adequately, because then you can see stuff which maybe some things you can leave on the lower end of normal or higher end of normal, but some things maybe you want to try and manage right into the sweet spot and really optimize them in order to protect your longevity within this sport. You know, because there's good and then there's great. And there is a difference. These are good results, but by no means are they completely optimal. They're close, don't get me wrong, and these are better than a lot of people, most people in fact, who are on anabolics of any weight, of any kind. You know, this suggests a good response to anabolics and a low propensity for side effects to appear, which I do believe in the genetic propensity thing, you know, and the genetic responder to all elements of anabolics, not just the muscle growth or whatever, but in terms of you know, your propensity to injury, your propensity to have, you know, for your organs to be stressed, you know, how well can they deal with that, with processing those chemicals and compounds. Everybody will be different, and this suggests we've got a fairly good system working for us, and hopefully it will be able to handle, you know, the lifestyle of a bodybuilder. But of course it will take active management. It always does. So overall, basically it seems good. As you can see here with the doctor's note, you know, everything is generally about where it was before, if not improved, which is a positive sign. I'm in a good place 8 weeks post-cycle. I feel like this is where I'd want to see a result, you know, at the sort of minimum to moderately satisfying range before launching into an off-season, and an off-season we will be launching into. So I've got my cycle. I know where we go from here. We'll continue to follow the safer use model because clearly it's working so far. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to be avoiding everything, and there are some things which, you know, go against my previous beliefs about cycle design and what I am and am not willing to do, but we're going to get into the logic of all of that and what made me change my mind and you know, what the next phase of my bodybuilding journey is going to look like over the next couple of weeks. You know, this should at least give you an idea of you know, what I would personally classify as good and bad. You know, if you aren't experienced enough to interpret your own results or, you know, whatever, MetaChecks do a great job. As you can see, you know, there's lots of learn more categories where you can just find out more about the measurements and what they mean and what a high or low result means. But you also get a doctor's note included, which is really valuable for a lot of people. They seem to actually know their stuff about anabolics and take it into account. So that's always welcome because most GPs, they don't really have the capability or knowledge to be able to interpret these for an enhanced bodybuilder. Generally, I would recommend MetaChecks. My coach, Josh Bridgman, actually has a code. It's either Josh Bridgman or Josh10. Go to his Instagram page and check it out, and that's how I got mine at a slightly more reasonable rate. But this is the advanced TRT test. Really, really good, really comprehensive. And as you know, I recommend before, during, and after a cycle, you get these done just to be able to track, you know, how that cycle has affected you, if there's anything worrying, you know, while you're on, because that can be a major concern, and that you're all ready and repaired for the next one. Thanks very much for tuning in, guys. More content coming to you over the next couple of weeks, and I will see you in the next one.